Throughout history, humans have waged wars against animals for various reasons, including their inadvertent involvement in conflict zones, punitive slaughter of indigenous communities, and the perception of certain creatures as pests. While there have been instances where animals emerge victorious, the unnecessary persecution of native species continues, perpetuating future ecological imbalances. The Four Pests Campaign. Mao Zedong's contempt for nature was palpable during his reign over China from 1949 to 1976. His slogan at the time was "Man must conquer nature," as part of his Great Leap Forward initiative. In addition to deforestation and improvements in farming methods, his Four Pests program targeted flies, mosquitoes, rats, and sparrows. As part of this policy, sparrows were mass killed, disrupting the ecological balance because they played a role in pest management. As a result, crops became vulnerable to insects such as locusts, resulting in a horrific famine that killed millions. Those who questioned these policies were persecuted, including as hydro engineer Huang Wanli, who was imprisoned for opposing a dam project. Even after the Great Leap Forward was abolished in the early 1960s, farmers were required to prioritize grain production, causing additional environmental harm and hardship for the Chinese people. The Battle of Ramree Island. Several military battles took place on Ramree Island off the coast of Burma, now Myanmar, during World War II. The most horrifying occurrence occurred in 1945, when British troops forced over 1,000 Japanese enemy soldiers into Ramree's deep mangrove swamp, which covered 10 miles, 16 kilometers. Unfortunately, the mangrove jungle was home to saltwater crocodiles, the world's largest reptile carnivores. Even mid-sized crocodiles of this species are capable of murdering adult humans, with some reaching over 20 feet, 6 meters in length and weighing over 2,000 pounds, 907 kilograms. Around 500 Japanese soldiers are thought to have escaped the marsh, with 20 eventually apprehended. However, it is estimated that 500 were eaten. Survivors told terrifying stories of crocodiles emerging out of nowhere and dragging victims away. Guinness World Records has recognized the incident as the most number of fatalities in a crocodile attack, albeit the actual statistics are debatable. The Buffalo War. In 1871, William Buffalo Bill Cody and a group of affluent New Yorkers set off on a buffalo hunting or bison hunting, as buffalo do not exist in America or Europe, expedition in Nebraska. It was also part of the U.S. Army's objective to subdue Native Americans by eradicating all buffalo, on which they relied for food. According to one colonel, kill every buffalo you can. Every buffalo killed means an Indian has died. This devastation was viewed as a technique of controlling Native Americans and forcing them to live on reserves. The 1873 economic slump resulted in an invasion of buffalo hunters murdering the animals for profit. Thousands of buffalo were slaughtered and their hides accumulated in towns, flooding the market. The buffalo population declined swiftly, and by the end of the 19th century, just a few hundred remained in the wild. Conservation efforts began in the 1870s, but President Ulysses S. Grant refused to sign a law to protect the animals. To replace the animals slaughtered, the government eventually sent cattle to several communities. The recent nomination of the American bison as the country's national mammal acknowledges the animal's historical significance. The Great Emu War. Farmers in Western Australia were already dealing with difficult circumstances in their farming lives as a result of the Great Depression's aftermath in 1932. Their difficulties were exacerbated when around 20,000 emus traveled inland during their mating season. Due to crop damage caused by emus, Australia declared war on them and soldiers armed with machine guns were deployed to fight them. The emus proved to be powerful adversaries, and despite multiple engagements, the human soldiers were unable to secure a decisive win. Emus are still plentiful in the areas surrounding Perth today, and their victory in the battle has sparked the development of an action comedy film. The War on Wolves. The United States has been fighting wolves since the 19th century in order to prevent them from predating on livestock. In 1905, the federal government sought to utilize biological warfare by infecting wolves with mange, and a decade later, Congress approved legislation ordering the elimination of wolves on federal land. All wolves in Yellowstone National Park have been eliminated by 1926 thanks to poisoning, killing, and trapping. Efforts were made in the 20th century to restore wolf populations through reintroduction programs and government protection under the Endangered Species Act (ESA). However, these conservation initiatives have been met with hostility by ranchers, hunters, and landowners who continue to believe that wolves constitute a threat to agriculture and wildlife populations. This has resulted in disputes, court fights, and contentious state and federal policies about wolf management, including the removal of wolves from ESA protection in some locations. The war on wolves in the United States has now evolved into an ongoing conflict between conservationists working to conserve and restore wolf populations and stakeholders with opposing interests and concerns who wish to eliminate them.